Home builders may be in trouble because based on a new report from the US Census Bureau just announced today, which is on December 22nd, they reported that sales of new single-family houses on a national level decreased to a 12-month low. It also came in about $100,000 less than the street's forecast as well. On top of that, inventory increased big time as well, increasing to an 11-month high. What's wild about this is based on sales contracts being signed between buyers and home builders for the month of November. And what happened in November? Rates decreased from the 7.6% rates we saw in October down to about 7.4% in November. So rates decreased slightly, albeit, but still sales plummeted to a 12-month low. On top of that, as you guys know, if you guys follow the channel, I've been reporting to you guys how all these builders are still offering incentives to home buyers right now. So for example, I actually just visited a builder, which is Lennar Homes in the greater Sacramento area about a week or so ago. They were offering a 30-year fixed rate at about 4.6%. That's approximately 2 percentage points below the current rates today. So because all these builders are offering incentives and of course rates are decreasing as well, this is just absolutely wild to think that sales actually decreased big time in November. Hope you guys appreciate this timely update, by the way. And when I read this report, I was actually pretty surprised here because overall builders have been gaining an advantage over people selling their houses on the resale market. And of course are all offering all these incentives which have been driving sales. But that has changed based on this report just announced on December 22nd. So this is for sales, which again is defined by a sales agreement signed between a buyer and a home builder or a deposit taken by the home builder for the month of November. So this is very much a leading indication of our US housing market based on signed contracts. So here's a look at the number of sales versus inventory levels. And these numbers, by the way, are seasonally adjusted and also annualized as well for sales. And also these are in thousands of units. So for the month of November, it came at 590,000, a decrease of 12.2% compared to October. Just absolutely insane. And as I mentioned at the very beginning of this video here, at 590,000, that's the sales pace in November. That was a 12-month low, the lowest sales pace since November last year. Also, as I mentioned, it came in well below the forecast because the forecast was at 695,000 and it came in at 590,000, a huge miss and a huge decrease compared to October. What's also wild about this as well, this is according to investing.com on their economic calendar here. So sales fell by 12.2% compared to October, whereas in October compared to September, it decreased by 4%. So the decrease this year or this November is about 3 times as bad as the previous month. In regards to sales over the past 5 years here, you can see here we have 590,000. Again, that's the lowest level since November of 2022. Also at 590,000, this is well below pre-pandemic levels as well. So for example, back in November 2019, 710,000. Now it's only at 590,000. Also, something I just noticed as well, when looking at pre-pandemic levels, the current sales pace this November at 590,000 is the lowest levels going back to December of 2018. One more thing I do want to mention regarding sales here is that every housing market's different, of course. It could vary by the neighborhood, the city, the county, the state, or the region as well. So the US Census Bureau looks at 4 major US regions. That's the Northeast, the Midwest, the South, and the West. Some very big changes here. So for example, in the South, which represents the vast majority of all home sales nationwide, they had 337,000 compared to the total of 590,000. But it decreased by 20.9% in one single month. It also fell by 8.4% year over year. So that's one of the main reasons why sales decreased on a national level. But on top of that, in the West, there was 150,000 home sales. Again, that's seasonally adjusted and annualized, and that represents a decrease of 5.1% month to month. In stark contrast, in the Midwest, when there was only 70,000 sales there, it increased by 25% month to month and a giant increase of 52.2% year over year. I actually lied. I want to say one more thing regarding sales numbers. So even though we have a decrease in rates, more incentives for buyers right now, that's offered by builders, again, sales decreased greatly as well. So for example, builders that were surveyed in November from the National Association of Homebuilders reported decreasing prices and offering incentives to home buyers, yet home sales still tanked. So speaking of that, here's that report from the NAHB, or the Home Builders Association. So builder confidence for building new single-family houses decreased in November, dropping to the lowest reading since December last year. It goes on to say here that many builders continue to reduce home prices to boost sales. I'll have an update for you guys regarding prices here very, very soon. In November, 36% of builders reported cutting home prices, up from 32% in the previous 2 months. So more builders are reducing prices, yet sales tanked, right? That, by the way, is a high share of builders decreasing prices during the cycle, tying the previous high that was set back in November last year. Meanwhile, 60% of builders provided sales incentives of all forms in November. That is down slightly from the 62% in October. So again, builders offering all these incentives, decreasing prices. We're also seeing a decrease in rates, but despite that, we're seeing decreases in sales down by 12.2%. Absolutely wow. So that is the big wow of today's video, but also this as well, because inventory levels increased by 2.5% compared to the previous month. It still is down by about 0.9% year over year, but at 451,000 new houses actually for sale, that actually is an 11-month high tied to the levels we saw back in December last year. In addition to that, the month supply also increased big time as well, increasing to 9.2 months, a giant increase of 16.5% in one single month, going from 7.9 to 9.2%. That, by the way, is the highest levels going back to November of 2022. And here's a look at our good Uncle Fred here regarding the month supply at 9.2 months. Again, the highest levels we had going back to November last year. Also at 9.2 months, look at how this compares to pre-pandemic levels. Back in, let's just call it November 2019, it was at 5.4 months. Now it's at 9.2. Also have a look at this, 451,000 homes for sale, the highest level since December last year. And also compared to pre-pandemic levels, just a joke here. Back in November 2019, only 320,000. Now it's at 451,000. So that means there's approximately 41% more new houses for sale than there was looking at pre-pandemic levels. Okay, let's change gears slightly here and talk about home prices. So the median sale price this November compared to last November decreased by 6%. Now, something to keep in mind here, this is what I reported to you guys last month, is that prices from October compared to last October, that was last month's report, sales decreased by 18%. Now it's only down by 6%. So the key takeaway here is that, like I mentioned right here, we can't make assumptions that the housing market is crashing or new home construction is crashing as well based on one data point, especially looking at year-over-year changes here. Plus, the median sold price for new home construction tends to vary quite a bit on a month-to-month basis due to limited sales as well as the mix in sales as well. So for example, this November, let's just look at this. Here is a non-seasonally adjusted numbers here, not annualized, only 41,000 home sales this November. Compare that to a resale market of existing houses that's around 300,000. So 300,000 resale home sales compared to about 41,000 in new home construction. On top of that, the mix in sales also tends to kind of skew the results here as well. So here's a look at the percentage of houses that sold by price range. So for houses that sold for over 750,000, which is right here, 1 year ago, 15% of all home sales in November last year were for houses that sold for over 750,000. Compare that to this November, it decreased to 7%. So a lower share of houses selling for over or well over the median sold price. In contrast, for sales that sold in the range of $300,000 to just under $400,000, it decreased from 31% down to 23%. On top of that, for sales in the range of $200,000 to $300,000, it went from 6% to 15%. So a higher share of home sales in the more affordable range, and also a lower percentage of houses sold that were more luxury houses. So again, I'm just mentioning that because the mix in home sales can really impact the median sales price overall on a national level. Okay, let's change gears slightly again and talk about the number of houses that sold or were for sale by stage of construction. And I have a key takeaway regarding this here in just a little bit here. For the houses that did sell, again, the total number was at 590,000, again, seasonally adjusted and also annualized. The vast majority of houses that sold this November were houses under construction, 264,000 of the 590,000 total. This is, of course, the majority of sales that came from houses under construction here. After that, we had completed houses very close behind the number of sales for houses under construction. But one thing I noticed here is that the number of houses that sold that were actually completed houses was actually the fewest amount going back to November of 2022. So the key question here is, could this be a sign that builders are having more trouble selling their inventory because we're seeing a decrease of completed houses that sold? So again, I will say stay tuned because we need more data on this. But here's something I also found to be a little bit concerning as well. Here's the number of houses that are for sale by stage of construction. Look at this, completed houses at 78,000. By my dumb analysis here, that's on par with pre-COVID levels. However, though, at 78,000 completed houses for sale, besides the onset of COVID, this was April of 2020. This is actually the highest levels we've had going back to September of 2019. Now, this is a key stat to track in order to gauge if builders are having trouble selling their inventory. So again, I'll mention this again over and over again. This is a closely watched stat that I'm personally following and reporting to you guys because sales of completed houses as well as completed houses that are still for sale is a key indicator about how home builders are really doing right now. So I'll definitely get posted with the latest developments on that. Here's also a look at our good Uncle Fred here looking at completed houses for sale. Something else to be aware of here is that 78,000 right now, this is well above the low that was set back in January last year at only 31,000. And ever since then has been increasing big time, except for this small decrease we saw back in May this year. Also at 78,000, this is of course very close to pre-pandemic levels, but it has been increasing big time, more than doubling ever since the lows we saw early last year. When zooming out over the past 10 years here at 78,000, this is also above November of 2018 and also well above November of 2017 at 63,000. November 2016 at 59,000. So well above the previous levels going back to 2016 through 2017. With that said, please comment below with your biggest takeaways from today's video. My biggest takeaway is that even though builders are offering all these incentives for home buyers, again, based on that report from the National Association of Home Builders, 60% of all builders are offering incentives such as rate buy downs, free closing cost credits, builder upgrades, etc. And also we saw a decrease in rates that we saw from the highs in October. And despite all this, sales tanked by 12.2%. On top of that, inventory levels also increased to an 11-month high. Absolutely crazy. This is probably the biggest decrease I've seen regarding this report here in quite some time. But in any case, please leave me a comment below with your biggest takeaways from today's video. And of course, I appreciate you guys. If you guys are still watching today's video, like and subscribe. And of course, share this video or any of my videos with anyone who may feel may benefit from the information I'm sharing. With that said, I appreciate you guys. Have an awesome day. I'll see you next video.